Thank you. Welcome, everybody, to the Asia Pacific ETL training. Today is day 1, and tomorrow will be day 2. We have a whole day packed of agenda, and I am going to mute you guys if I hear background noise, okay? So if you could, pretty please mute yourself. Yes, the deck. I will get to the deck in 1 second, okay? So like I mentioned, if you can, please get to your little box. If you don't already have your box open, because the deck and everything, all the material actually is sitting on the box itself. So very quickly, I will go through the instructions one more time, given that it's if you have a Windows app. Your information, all of you, should have been sent out in an Excel spreadsheet yesterday morning that came from OHDSI APAC. It has 2 things. It has this particular Excel spreadsheet and instructions on how to access the box. Okay, so here, really, if you put into your application, the remote desktop, the box name itself, you can then it'll ask you for an account. You want to click more choices and then use different account. In my case, I'm already set like that. And then you just want to put in the account name, which is OHDSI, as well as the password, and then hit the OK button. Once you do that, you will get a little box that will say, that's a yellow warning. Once mine gets in there, there's a yellow warning. And you'll get this, always click yes, don't click no, click yes, and then it will take you to your box. Now, for today's session, and then if you get this, you can just click on computer and it'll take you to where you're supposed to go. Okay. Now for today's session, what you will see, actually today and tomorrow's session, we will be using this box. What is in here are a bunch of little folders. So this folder that says student, if you click on that, that is where all of the exercises you guys will be doing are, as well as the decks for today and tomorrow. So today is day 1. This is a PDF. You can actually click on that and then save it to your own computer. You can actually save all this to your own computer if you want. Okay, so that's where all the deck and material is. So everything is inside this box. If you have a problem with the box, put your information into the chat. And if necessary, we will have you guys taken out to a different room, a breakout room, to figure out what's wrong with your boxes. Okay. So with that said, I am going to continue. So the agenda for today, like I said, it's packed. Hopefully we'll be able to get through everything. If not, we do have some time tomorrow to try to get through more. But I do want to say this course will require you guys to do some homework afterwards. Okay. Hopefully you can get through some of the homework, but if you can get through, I don't anticipate everybody being able to get through all the homework. Okay, but it will get you through enough that it can be utilized again for tomorrow's classes. Okay, so in today's class, this is based on Korean Standard Time, which is right now. So this would have been at the top of the hour. So we have an introduction to ETL and Agile methodology. Then I will go through the source data analysis with you guys. And the way the classes are broken out, it's going to be some lecture, and then giving you guys time to do some of the exercises that we have planned for you, and then have a review together. The exercises will all be done in this room together. If we find that there's too many people or too many questions, we may break you guys into rooms. Now, I do know there are some folks here that do not speak English as well as you probably would like. So if you have questions during the exercise sessions and want to speak in your native language, let us know. We have Chinese speakers here, we have Korean speakers here, and we will move you off into a different room so that you can ask the questions in a different language. Okay, and then the English speakers will stay here. Right, and then we do have a break, so we do try to give you guys breaks. There will be an hour break in between for lunch, for brunch, whatever time zone it is, right? And then we will go into the vocabulary mapping, and then again, same style, lecture, exercise, and review. And then giving everybody a 15-minute break towards the end, and then we'll go into ETL writing, again, lecture, review, and exercises. Now you see a bunch of names over here, and there are probably names you haven't seen yet. So I want to introduce all the speakers, and I want to thank them all for their support. So I won't butcher anybody's name, so I'll let them speak for themselves. So Professor Yu, do you want to go first? Your name's first.
Oh, yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm Chen Yu. I'm working in the Department of Preventive Medicine at Yonsei University, and really honored to be here. And hopefully, and today is my birthday. So if my lecture sucks, please remember that today is my birthday. So be good to me. Thanks.
You have a sense of humor. Silva, are you here?
Yeah, hi. Hello, everyone. Silva here. I'm working in School of Public Health. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to share my knowledge and also learn from you guys. Happy to be part of this program. Thank you.
Awesome. Jing, are you here?
Yes. Hi. Hi, everyone. This is Jing. So I work in the Omap team here in China, working at QVIA, and looking forward for the training.
All right, and then lastly, there's me. My name is Mui Van Zandt. I'm a senior director and one of the OHDSI leaders within both APAC and the normal global side. So most of you guys probably have heard of me from all the APAC community calls. So I won't talk too much about that. All righty, so we're going to move on. Again, if you have any questions, please speak up or put it in the chat. I do stare at the chat, but I may not be staring at it all the time, okay? So feel free to stop me if you have any questions, okay? So ETL, what is ETL? That's what we're doing here, right? What are we doing here and why? So ETL really very quickly stands for extract, transform, and load. And that's really what's required for us. It's a technical term that really is what's required for us when we want to take data from your native version over to the Omap version. Being able to extract it, transform it based on a bunch of logic, and then load it into new CDM, right? And that's what we're going to do. So the goal of this tutorial is really to teach you the best practices around designing an ETL and maintaining the CDM. We're actually not going to sit here and actually teach you how to code the actual ETL portion of it, because if we had to do that, I would probably have to spend a whole week with you guys instead of just the amount of time we're spending. So you'll notice in today's agenda, a lot of it is around analysis. And then tomorrow, we will go over some practices, best practices, and principles of coding with an Omap data asset, and then we'll go over data quality. And a lot of the exercises that we're going to have you guys do, either you can do them by hand or you can use SQL if you're good with SQL, and you can go through the SQL databases. But we actually will not teach you actually how to sit here and write the conversion code, okay? That's not what we're going to do today. Okay, so in an ETL process, what's the best practice? And this is something, you know, we've created within OHDSI after talking to multiple teams and working through what are our common needs. So within an ETL process, you can see here, we have a need for quite a few people, different people actually. So we have data experts and CDM experts. And sometimes they can be the same thing, but sometimes they are not going to be, right? So data experts are the people who actually understand the native data, the original data, the source data, whatever you want to call that portion of it. And then the CDM experts is those who actually understand the CDM. Again, they can be the same people, but what I found out in a lot of times, especially like companies like ours where we Omap in a lot of different data assets, our data experts are not the same as our CDM experts. So like in my team, I actually have a group of CDM experts, and their job is to go understand the source data and then do the ETL mapping, the actual business rules for the mapping. Right? We also need medical experts, and where the medical experts kick in is not on the data side, but a lot on the medical terminology side, on better understanding what sorry, there's a lot of wind. So if you can, please mute yourself. If not, can one of the other hosts help me go around and mute the people who
撤
are?
掉咱公司的内网了，你连不上，必须用那个 guest 才能连。
So I'm sorry, let me go and mute some.
Hi, Mui. I muted all, so I think I muted you as well. Can you unmute her?
Yeah, don't do mute all, because you'll mute me too. So, alrighty, thank you. Okay, so the medical expert, really, their need, what we typically want them for or need them for is the medical coding. So with a lot of what's inside OHDSI, we already have a lot of medical coding already mapped to the Omap standards vocabulary, but sometimes there's not. And I can tell you with a lot of our conversions, you will still need them because there's always custom mapping that has to be done where you have text fields instead of codes, or even within a hospital, they have their own unique procedure codes or their own unique ways of identifying things. And that's where we need the medical experts to come in and say, hey, do these actually map to the right thing, or is there a better way of mapping them? Of course, we're going to need technical people, so the people who actually writes the ETL code. And then within those technical people, we also have quality assurance folks as well, right? And then these are the tools that are the public tools that you can utilize, and we're going to go over quite a few of these in today and tomorrow's session. So these are the different ones from analysis, data quality, as well as development. So analysis, we have White Rabbit, we have Rabbit in a Hat, and Usagi. These three we're going to go over today, and then you guys are going to learn how to utilize these today, right? You can have internal data quality checks of your own if you want, but publicly there's also Achilles and the data quality dashboard, which we will go over tomorrow. We're not going to go over what these are. The use, we'll go over the use of them tomorrow, but you're not going to be able to actually play with these guys, okay? So in OHDSI, there are best practices that you can go into. In your little box, we actually already have, if you click on the little Google Chrome, by default, it will open up to the Atlas that's already installed in here. So if you want to play with that, you can. However, I do want to caution you that this is a little slow, but you'll see that there's already a wiki site that is here. So in the wiki is where that was pointing to. And in the wiki, you can go and find the actual ETL stuff by clicking in the project and work groups. I want to make this a lot bigger so people can see. But if you click on the project and work group, there is one in here for ETL, and that's where you will find all of our best practices. Now, it may be gone by now because we did clean this up. Maybe it is gone now because we did do a lot of cleanup over here. Now, the other place that you can go for it is really the CDM and vocabulary working group, because we did put a lot of the ETL best practices. Well, I think we might have moved it here. But let me go find the other site that you can go. GitHub, that's the other place you can go. Let me make this bigger. If you go in the CDM model and click on the wiki here, there's the wiki site. So this site, like I said, last year, during COVID, we spent a lot of time, the CDM working group spent a lot of time cleaning up the common data model, and we added in a lot of the ETL best practices into here. You can see what we kind of did here, what their cycles are and how they maintain the conversion. But if you go to the versions and click on 5.3, you will see all the tables, as well as you can see the ETL conventions and all that. So we actually put a lot of that information in there already. So that's on the box, or you don't even need to go to the box to get to that, but we have these on the boxes so you can click on if you want to. But these links are available publicly to you, okay, without the box. Okay, So one of the things that we also do, quite a few of us in the community do, we're not saying that you have to do this, but something that we discovered works really well, is adapting the Agile Scrum methodology, which is a software development methodology, into the ETL conversion process, okay? So what is Agile Scrum for those who are less familiar with it? Like I mentioned, it is a software development methodology. It does change your frame of mind. It is an iterative process, and you do things in small little chunks. And it allows you to evolve through collaboration and evolve throughout every little sprint that you go over. And it allows us to self-organize across functional teams, okay? So if you want to read up on Agile and what it is, you can go here. I'm not going to spend a lot of time going over what it is, but I just want to let you guys know what the methodology is that we utilize. So why do a bunch of us now decide, right, instead of going to the traditional, go over the entire data conversion, why do we want to utilize this concept called Agile? Most data development is done in a waterfall style. We utilize Agile because, again, it has a very lightweight framework, and it's adapted quite by a lot of people, right? It actually does increase the productivity of the teams. I can tell you when I first implemented it inside our teams 5 years ago, there was a lot of resistance because data development folks and probably research are not used to splitting things up into such small chunks, because what they will say is, hey, I don't understand, I'm just developing the whole ETL, so I take all these tables and transform them. How the heck do you break those out into smaller chunks, right? But we've done this. It took us quite a bit of time to adapt to it. But now they're used to it, and they actually like it a lot more because they're able to very quickly say, where are we, what are our timelines, and how can we improve ourselves? And because within Agile Scrum, you have KPIs that you can measure as well. So it is high value feature. So the team has learned to develop what we call minimal viable product and time box that and how long it takes to do certain things. And we've come up with, time and guidelines for all of that. Like, how long does it normally take us to do all the, what we call dimension tables, the person table, the provider table, and all that fun stuff? How long does it take us normally to do the procedure table? How long does it normally take us to do the visit occurrence table? So we're able to basically chunk out all of our CDM tables into small little time on average, right? And because it's short cycle, we are able to keep a lot of our business stakeholders happy because they're constantly being able to see progress. Every 2 weeks, they can see progress and play with it, play with the actual data instead of waiting, 2 months for something to play with. And I can tell you, or I should stress that this is a very effective methodology, especially if you're trying to prove to someone why utilize the Omap CDM, because you can develop what we call an MVP, which is typically the person table, the provider table, the location table, and then probably the jog occurrence table, right? You can develop those 4 tables, and people can start doing things like treatment pathways. They can also already develop, treatments pathways just using those tables and not have to worry about all the other tables if you're just looking at, hey, what about these patients who are taking metformin, and then what are they taking next? What are they taking next, right? Or you can add in the condition table and you're good, right? So that's why we utilize the Agile Scrum methodology within all of our development process. So the Agile Scrum methodology, earlier I talked about the people that's necessary for ETL. These are the people that are necessary for an Agile Scrum methodology. They are the same people, okay? So we have product owners. It's the people who understand the product, basically your Omap conversion the most. And those people are typically that CDM expert that I mentioned in the previous slide. We have the Scrum Master, or in other terms, the project manager. but in Agile Scrum, it's really the Scrum Master, not the project manager, because some of the project management stuff actually falls under the product owner. But it's a person who helps to make sure things are on target and that the schedule is being kept, right? And then you have the rest of the team. So your medical coders can go in here, your development team would go in there. So those are who they are. We have 5 ceremonies, and these 5 ceremonies are repeated every 2 weeks. So you have the backlog grooming, which is where you prioritize all of your what we call backlogs. In waterfall terms, all your requirements, right? You have the sprint planning, which is every 2 weeks, we plan out what we're going to do in those 2 weeks. What is everybody going to do in those 2 weeks? We have our daily Scrum calls, which is a stand-up call to 15 minutes to say, hey, where are we? Do you have any impediments? Are we good, right? Are we going to be able to make the sprint, right? The goal is to finish the sprint. And then we have our demo, so where we demo things to people. And then we have what we call a retro, which is going back and say, what did we do well and what didn't we do well, and how can we do better the next time? So every 2 weeks, these meetings repeat themselves over and over again, okay? So I kind of went through this already, but again, the product owner is the person who maintains the product as well as defines the priority. The Scrum Master is the person who basically shields the team from any type of interruption and makes sure that the team is on target and on track with that sprint. So again, they're concentrating in that 2 weeks, right? And the Scrum team is the people who are there. Now, most Scrum teams that we have are no more than 5 to 6 people. We've had them with 3 people before, but if you get any larger than that, then it becomes a little bit less not manageable. Okay. Now, here's a typical Omap conversion. So people ask, how in the world do we do this? So we separate, the way we separate things is you start with sprint 0, and then you keep going, right? We separate them by the CDM tables. So when I said dimension tables earlier, this is what I'm talking about. They're like your lookup tables, right? So you do you start sprint 1, we have people, the product owner or that CDM expert, they do the analysis for this first. So again, we'll go over what we mean by analysis in a little bit, but they do the analysis on these tables first. And then while they're doing that, our development team is basically setting up the environment and getting everything for themselves to start development. Okay, then comes sprint 1, they're already done with this. These guys will start developing this while the analyst team moves on to do the business rules and the mapping for the drug exposure table. And when these guys are done, then we can demo that to our business owners to say, hey, we've loaded all your people, we've loaded all your providers, we've loaded certain tables, right? And then again, it repeats itself. So then these guys develop the drug exposure, these guys move on to the condition procedure, and these guys. So technically, right, after you can see here 3 sprints, which is 6 weeks, I can actually start playing with the Omap CDM data. I can actually have a person go and say, run if you really want to run, cohorts, saying how many people took X drugs, how many people took this drug before that drug, how many people switched from this drug to that drug. So you can already do that after 6 weeks. You don't have to wait for the whole thing to be developed before you can do that. So that's the benefit of Agile, and that's the benefit of doing it this way. Now, you don't have to do it this way, but what we've noticed is we always do the what we call dimension tables first, the lookup tables first. And that's because all the other tables have a reliant, they're foreign keys to this guy. So that's why we do these first. And we always leave the error tables, the observation table, and the visit tables for the end, because half the time these guys impact the visit table and the observation period table and the error tables, right? So we always leave those for last. So we always do the what we call the dimension tables first, then we do the fact tables next, then we do the derived tables last. So that's how we ourselves within our team does this, and it works better because again there are dependencies, and it took us a while to get rid of all these dependencies, right? So I see there was a question here. Do you have an overlap? I do. So again, it depends on how many team members you have. Today in my team, I actually have 2 developers and 1 analyst and 1 Scrum Master. And that Scrum Master is also a developer at the same time. So my developer is also a Scrum Master, and what they do, the Scrum Master really, their job is to make sure, so they're more like 50% Scrum Mastering and 50% actual ETL. And my development team actually also QAs. So they do both data quality, and my analyst also does data quality as well. So they do overlap. I do get an overlap on those. Don't things like condition occurrence need a link to visit occurrence? Yes, they do. And that's why it's at the end, and then we go back and fill that in. We just leave the visit occurrence to 0 for the time being, right? And then you go back in. Our typical, so what is the typical duration of a sprint? In my group, it's typically 2 weeks. I've heard of people doing it in 1 sprint or 1 week. I've also heard people do it in 3 weeks, and I've heard people do it in 4 weeks. We have tried the 1 week before in my group, too fast. There is very little that you can do in 1 week. Way too fast, not enough, too chaotic. We've tried 3 weeks before, a little too long for our personal taste. And then 4 weeks for us is way too long. So really, we do 2 weeks, but you can do anywhere between 1 to 4. It really depends on your group and like the amount of dedication your group has to it, as well as how your group culture is. For us, we've tried the 1, 2, and 3. We've never tried the 4. And we come down to 2 weeks is a good happy medium to get us through quite a few of these, because we've gotten it down to the fact that we can do the drug exposure table in actually one week. We can code it and we can load the whole thing in 1 week. So then we can put 2 tables in there, right? And most of these will not take us more than a week. So that's how we've done it. No, so the question about do you use the full data during a sprint? I will answer that tomorrow, but the answer is no. I can tell you if you do that, it will take you forever to code. So we do not use the full data asset. I'll talk to you about how that environment is set up. In my group, our teams are 100% allocated to the effort. And it really depends on your team. If you don't dedicate them 100%, then you just have to, their story points just has to be based on how much percentage they are allocated. There are times when my teams are not 100% allocated, so then we would just say they're 50%. Then I only give them 50% of the story points that they should have, right? Again, I can go on a long time about how to implement Agile Scrum. I have a whole entire week's course on how to properly set up Agile Scrum, to be very honest, inside this. So what are the obstacles so far after implementing the sprints? Some of the typical obstacles I get at the beginning, I don't have much obstacles anymore. Like I said, our team has done this for 5 years now. And even with the new people, we train them and we adapt them, and they have people to ask questions about. So there are not as much obstacles. But when I first started and when I implement this in any new group, like I just implemented this inside our research team, our data scientist team, because again, they're not used to Agile Scrum either. It's a big challenge because it's that mentality shift of knowing when they don't like the daily stand-ups. I can tell you that much. Everybody, including myself, when I used to do this as a individual, I hated, I do not like the daily stand-ups because I'm like, why are you making me say something that I just said yesterday? Right? And what we say is then your stories are not small enough, because if you have a story that goes 3 or 4 days, then it's a little too big. Okay, your stories needs to be broken out a bit smaller. Most stories should be no more than a day or so. Now, we have stories that go a little further, but the team has learned to give updates based on where they have gone up to that point. I have to say, Agile Scrum is a methodology. It's a guideline. You adapt it to your group. Okay, there is no one person who, no one team that will adapt Agile the exact same way as a different group. Everybody adapts Agile differently. Okay, in my group, we have learned to adapt it to meet our needs, right? And to make sure we get what we do. And we do have daily stand-up calls, and folks have gotten used to it. Some of their user stories, when we first started, we made them break it out into very small chunks, like at least a day, so that they get used to that thought process of breaking up their work. Okay, now they don't have stories. Some of their stories are 2 to 3 days long, but they know that within on day one, if they're not as far as where they should be, they say something. Again, it's adapting, right? If you use the normal Agile Scrum, you have to write out all the acceptance criteria and all that. At the beginning, when I first set up a team, I make them do that. They do not like me for saying that, and they do not like me for having them do that. But then again, they get used to the mentality of what to expect. What am I trying to build? Not how, what. What am I building? What am I doing? And what are my impediments? And what is getting in my way? So they get used to that mentality. My ETL team now does not write, they write user stories, but there are no descriptions because it's already implied, because we do this so many times. Drug exposure table, load the drug exposure table. That's it. They know now because they have an ETL spec and everything, so they know what they need to load. In the beginning, we used to spell all that out. So again, I'm telling you all this because at the beginning, you want to be very rigid and stick to Agile. But as you develop and through the retros with your teams, you modify it to fit your team's needs. Okay. So right now we are on version 5.3 because version 6 has been, I should say, decommissioned. And right now we're working on actually releasing version 5.4. So if you have an interest, there's actually a hackathon next week, but it is during US Standard Time, on creating all the development stuff that's necessary for version 5.4. Why did we obsolete version 6.0? Because there were too many changes, no one was adapting it, and the tools could not catch up to it. So we're trying to take it one step at a time instead of making such a big jump. Okay, so right now everybody's still on 5.3.1. Okay, all righty. So I won't go about this anymore. Again, a lot of it is culture change and behavioral change. So what you guys are probably used to, formal deadlines, one big gigantic deployment, decisions are done by committee. It's controlled by a project management team. Over here, we do what we call sprint releases. We do smaller chunks of releases where possible, right? The team is the one who makes the decisions. Like I said, we started off being very rigid because we made sure everybody understood and followed. And for a period of time there, my head was probably on the target board where they were all shooting darts at. But then after a while, I don't attend the retros. They figure out how to make it better for the team, and they've basically empowered themselves. So the teams all self-function right now. And we're always continuously changing. So by your stakeholders seeing the data beforehand, they may find something that you guys didn't find way earlier, and then you can make those changes much earlier than waiting until later. Okay, so those are some of the differences between Agile and Waterfall. Here's another example of a timeline, but this is what the analyst does, what the medical staff does, and then what the developer does, right? Earlier I was showing you how the tables are structured, right? Which tables you do. So this one is a little bit different. Here you have project kickoff, the analyst preps, analyzes the source data, the medical staff starts working on the vocabulary mapping. So if you have any custom vocabulary, you want to start figuring out what those are at the beginning, right? And then so that they can work on it in chunks as well. And then your developer starts loading all the tables in. So again, sprint 1, our analyst starts working on the dimension tables. They identify what's necessary for custom mapping. The developer sets things up. Sprint 2, then the analyst moves on. The developer starts developing. The medical staff is right now doing custom vocabulary. So again, over and over again, so they're doing something different. They're overlapping each other potentially, but they're doing things in chunks. And we know that from here, what their endpoint is. In 2 weeks, this is what we expect to have done. If we can't, then we can properly adjust all of our timelines afterwards, right? So I would know very quickly if they're unable to get the dimension tables done, let's just say here, then I know that my project is actually going to be shifted out. So I already know, 2 sprints in that my project potentially has to be shifted out. Or we figure out, project management wise, you figure out what scope can be reduced, right, to make sure you still hit the deadline. or do I need to bring in more resources? So it allows us very quickly to shift things because every 2 weeks there is a targeted deadline that we're hitting. Okay. Okay. I see I've probably hopefully answered all the questions around Agile Scrum. So what I'm going to go into next is source data analysis. Okay. And so within ETL, I can say the way we do things, it's about a third, and a third. Okay. A third of the time is spent on analysis. A third of the time is spent on the actual ETL development. Then a third of the time is actually spent on data quality. So if you look at really the whole Omap conversion, only about a third of it is technical. The rest are not. And that's, at least in our group, that's how it is, because it takes a lot of time to understand all the rules and the data itself to make sure we implement all the proper rules and all the proper standards that are necessary. And what I get a lot is, or a lot of my team gets a lot is, how do you prove to me that you didn't lose anything, you didn't drop anything, you didn't change anything from my data, right? And that's where the quality assurance comes in. And that's why we focus so much time on quality assurance, because I not only have to prove to my own internal business team, but when we use the data for research, I have to prove it to the researchers as well as my clients that I didn't like suddenly take the data and transform it into a totally different beast, right? So that's why I say we spend a lot more time. The actual ETL conversion work really only takes up 33% of our time. Okay. So data analysis, how do you do that? There are multiple ways to doing data analysis. I'm just going to show you what the OHDSI way is doing it. And if you guys have any questions, you can ask me, right? But before I go into that, there are three different tools that we will be showcasing today to show you how to do analysis. The first one is White Rabbit, which is actually source data analysis. And then there's Usagi, which helps you with your custom mapping. And lastly, we have Rabbit in a Hat, which helps you with your ETL specification writing. Okay, these are tools that you can use when you are new to OHDSI and when you're new to doing the Omap conversion, because they are very, very useful. After a while, you may or may not use these tools anymore. Okay, so for example, my team, we don't use Rabbit in a Hat anymore, because from it, we created the template and we just utilize our template and we just fill it in, okay? Because again, my team has done probably Omap conversions to over 20 different data sources around the world. So they know exactly what they need to do now, that they don't need a tool to help them do the actual visual mapping, right? They just fill in the end result, okay? We still do use White Rabbit and we do use Usagi, but our folks don't, my folks don't use this Rabbit in a Hat anymore. The new people do. So we have new folks, we have them trained on it so that they understand logically what it is, but all of my seasoned folks don't use Rabbit in a Hat anymore, okay? So we're gonna go into White Rabbit first, okay? In OHDSI, you'll notice if you go out there, many of our apps and many of our tools and software are all, or even projects, they're all like Greek names, right? You got Athena, you got Hades, you got Atlas, you got Achilles, except we have these two rabbits and Usagi, okay? I asked that question, why in the world did you guys use rabbits and why the heck did you use Usagi? From what I understand, that was before the times. That was before they went down this whole path of coming up with a theme of Greek names. I never put 1 + 1 together, but when I did this same tutorial in China, I said White Rabbit. White Rabbit is a candy in China. So they're like, wow, you guys named it after a candy in China. And it's a very popular candy too. Yes, I'll show you in a second. I have a box of it here somewhere. I'll show you. It's a little White Rabbit candy. It's very popular in China. But after a while, I'm like, oh, I didn't even realize that. So quite interesting. Usagi, of course, is Japanese. So we have a little bit of an Asia flavor in OHDSI as well. But what White Rabbit is used for, it's really to analyze the structure and the content of your source data. When you first start doing an analysis, we typically have a list of questionnaires that we ask people. So for example, I ask, who is the person who best knows the data? Because I need that person, right? How big is your data? How big of a file is it? Because yes, there you go. Somebody posted it. Because I have to know whether or not I have enough space in my environment. If I don't, I have to set up the right environment, right? I ask privacy questions. I ask, hey, who is allowed to see this data? Can everybody see this data? In some of mine, can the data leave the country? Because my team sits in the United States and maybe the data is in Asia or in France. So can the data leave that country and come over to the United States? If no, then I have to set up an environment inside that country, right, where my team can then gain access to. I ask questions like, do you have a data dictionary that I can read or that my team can look at? And do you have sample data? So we have a bunch of questions we typically ask. And normally what people will give me is sample data, or they will give me a data dictionary. Okay, but there are times where I do not get a data dictionary. I only get an extract of my data. And that's when you use this White Rabbit. Because, or even sometimes when I do get a data dictionary, I get the answer, but it's extremely outdated because we haven't had a time to update it in the last 2 years. Okay, and lots have changed. So that's when you use White Rabbit, because it will take what you have and profile it and basically create a data dictionary for you to a degree. It just doesn't have a description of the fields, but it creates a data dictionary for you and gives you certain aspects like the frequency and the unique values that are inside. And what you can do is then compare it to the data dictionary if you have one and say, oh, I have more questions here. Oh, I don't have any more questions here. Okay, so that's what White Rabbit is all about. So for everybody, you guys can download it. It is on GitHub. So if you guys are inside your little box, it's inside here, inside the GitHub repository. Now I want to go back to here. Repositories, they've changed this. You can search here, right? You can go White Rabbit, and you'll see it's the first one that pops up. So it's right here. You can just go to White Rabbit, Rabbit and Hat, both of them are here. You can click on this and then you can download it. You can click on it and you can download everything that you want from here. Now, for us, we're not going to have you guys download it, but I want to show you where things are so you can go download it on your own when you actually are out of this class. For us, we're not going to download it because everything already has been loaded onto the box. So you can see here, we already have a shortcut to White Rabbit, Usagi, as well as Rabbit in a Hat, okay? So what you're gonna do, if you guys wanna follow, feel free, or you can just listen, because after this, I'm gonna have you guys do it yourself, okay? So what you wanna do is click on this little White Rabbit shortcut here, and what it pops up is this little box right here, okay? This little box shows you that, hey, where am I going to go? You have to pick a file to go scan, okay? All of the files that you have, the data files that you have that you're going to scan are sitting in this mimic data folder right here, okay? What we're going to use for the whole session is all of this mimic data. Now, we did put it in Excel spreadsheets. So that's typically what White Rabbit will either take Excel spreadsheets or you can set it to a database connection string. Okay, in our case, we're just going to use the Excel spreadsheet. So I'm going to go off of this first one, which is the administration one. So here, I'm going to have to go pick a folder. Okay, tell me if I'm going too fast for you guys. Okay, here I'm going to pick a folder and I'm going to go to this one that says mimic data right here. Okay, and I'm going to click on that, and in there should be select folder. Oh, that's the whole thing. I don't want the whole thing. Let's see, I just want all files. Maybe it's not there. Maybe I'm a little cuckoo. Let's see, where's my desktop? I'm going to go to my desktop. I'm going to click on this guy. Yes, I don't want all my files. How come I cannot select the file that I want? What am I doing wrong? Jing or Jiawei, can you guys assist here? Is this not where the files are?
Maybe you can store in desktop folder, not in mimic data folder. Yeah.
Yeah, I did. I am on my desktop. And then it's this folder, but the data is not here.
Oh, this is the place You choose to store the scan report.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes,
Yeah.
never mind. That's down here. I'm picking the wrong one. Oh my goodness. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry. So this is the place I'm storing the scan report. So pick a location that I want to store the scan report. Oh my goodness. I am still going to select the scan report right there. And then here is where I pick what I want. So in our case, it is text delimited files, right? This is my, and then I want to, how come I don't get to set the path? I have to test my connection first.
Just the
Data
first
found.
one.
Yes, I know, but this is where I should be able to pick the file that I want, not the folder. Oh, well, it's going to scan all of them.
Scan and add the folder, yeah.
Yeah, it's going to scan all of them. Oh, well, I wanted to only pick one. I didn't want it to scan all of them because it's going to take a while to scan all of them. But okay. So here, oh, no, yeah. This is where I go. This is what happens when I don't use this for a while. Here, I'm going to add the files that I want. So that's where I wanted to scan and pick up the files. So here, if you go over to the scan, I'm going to pick the admin one, right? Because I only want to scan one. You can do it all at a time, but it will take a while. So in our case, we're just going to scan one so that we can look at things. So here, I'm going to pick this one to scan. And you want to pick, depending on what you want, minimum cell counts. So if you want ones with zeros in it or one in it, that's what you change. Max number of distinct values, so of the tables, because some of the tables might be huge, how many max values do you want, right, to show up? So here I'm picking 1,000, and you get to pick here, do you want to scan the whole thing? Do you want to scan, you know, 1 million of the records or whatever, because some of your data may be huge, right? So here, because they're little Excel files, I'm just going to pick all. And you hit the scan button, it will actually start scanning. So it says generating scan report. It's done, scan report generated. So it's done. I can click here. There should be a scan report now. See, so because I put it out there, there's a scan report right there. And if I click on it, ooh, and make this bigger. You can see that it's already scanned the file that I'm looking at. This is the table. This is an overview, right? So it has the all the field names, what the integer is, how many record counts there are, the frequency, the fraction of it being empty. So this means that it's never empty, right? But this means there's a certain percent time that it's empty, okay? But what you can click on is here under this admin CVS. And what it's going to tell you is the actual information that I'm looking for. So there's a column called row ID, and then it's listing out their uniqueness. So this must be unique because you can see it all has 1 in it, right? So the row ID by default, you can see that this is unique, even though I'm betting you the word row ID means it's unique. Then you have the subject ID. There looks like there's duplicates in here. So this particular ID is showing up 19 times. This one seems like it's a unique ID as well because it's all 1, right? So you can see these are dates, but what I can see very quickly is the format of the dates. So you can see that these dates have some really funky formatting. Really funky formatting. Maybe we formatted the file improperly. I don't know, but see, so those are the things you can quickly notice, right? When you do a scan report, it's like, dates don't look like this. Are we sure? Most of us aren't going to be alive during these dates. So maybe there's a problem there. But then you see that this pops up 6 times. It's the same thing with this date, discharge date. Wow, these dates kind of look funky as well. So maybe there's something wrong with the file that we have to go look at, right? So all these dates seems to look funky. But you can keep going, basically, and again, you can look at some of these things. The emission here, we can see that for the death date, quite a few of them are not populated. Only some records are populated with death dates, but quite a few people don't have death dates here, or quite a few of these transactions don't have death dates. But these are the emission types. So we have these types of emission, we have these type of emission locations, and so on and so on and so on. So that's what a scan report allows you to do. Basically look at these things and be able to ask more questions, right? And you can start seeing that For example, if I were doing an Omap CDM conversion, I know that ethnicity is inside my database. So this is the unique list of values. So now I can at least start working on the custom mapping for these guys, right? And saying, okay, these are all my unique values. So how do I map these to the ethnicities that are sitting in the data that we have, right? Same thing with some of these other things that you have here, like insurance. Wow, I see that I have insurance information. So how do I map these to insurance? I see that there's a discharge location. So these are things I should be able to map to something inside the Omap CDM, right? And as well as the emission types. So that's what scan reports allow us to quickly glance at and look at and see what might be going on inside the database and be able to plan for it better. So any questions on the rabbit in a hat or white rabbit? Is the time field recognized as a date because the weird dates, or is it data truly having an issue that we need to check? So this guy just recognizes it the way it should be. So my guess is it may be a problem with the data itself, because I've done these before in Excel spreadsheets where these are dates. So it may be a problem with the data. So then you can go and explore the data and see that maybe it's keyed in here wrong. See, you can see this, it has the 2020 already. So it's the data itself that has the problem. Or maybe when we transferred the data over from our database, we didn't do a proper job of that. Now, or we did that on purpose so that you'll see that it's a bug, okay? That you see problems, right? I don't want to give you a perfect white rabbit scan, or else I have nothing to talk about, okay? So, so there's that. Okay, any questions on white rabbit? Because what we're going to have you do next is the exercises. How well does white rabbit scale? It scales pretty big. Have I done it on 1 terabyte data before? I'm pretty sure my team has. I have databases that are up to 10 terabytes. But again, do you really want to do it right now? Versus do you want to scan a little bit at a time? So it goes back to that same question earlier about, do you run things on your full data asset, right? So my answer to that is I would not run it on your full 1 terabyte data. I would run it on a sample of it, like the 1 million or so, because then you'll catch a majority of it. At least then you'll know that you need to potentially run a distinct list. Then you can run the distinct list yourself in the database, because it'll be a lot faster if you use the database, especially if you have an index against it, right? White Rabbit is just a small little app. So if you want it to crunch, it can crunch for quite a while. But I wouldn't recommend you running it against your whole 1 terabyte of data. It can, but I wouldn't recommend it. It might take a few days for it to come back. Okay. So again, yeah, some of this stuff may or may not make sense, but that's what we want you guys to be able to see, right? And that's what White Rabbit allows you to be able to see. Like you said, why sometimes the discharge date is before the emission date. I don't know. In this one, it does. Oh, here, don't look at it as this is 1 record, okay? This is not 1 record. This is the unique count of this particular field and how many times this particular field comes up. This is a unique count of this particular field and how many times it comes up. It is not to say that there are 6 records that has this emission date and that has this, that same 6 record has this discharge date, okay? So don't look at it that way. They don't go parallel like this, okay? They're each field and the frequency. That is something that I know that people have gotten wrong before, okay? This is not 1 record, okay? All right, so I see that you got that. So what we're gonna have you guys do, because I'm gonna skip over all this because I just did all this, I did all this, I did all this. We're gonna have you guys go do this yourself and start analyzing it yourself and play with it yourself, okay? So the exercise, what we want you guys to do is go and do what I just did, but not only do it on the 1 table that I did. Do it on all the tables. You can do it all at a time or you can do it 1 at a time. Up to you, okay? And it's easy. You just hit the little add button and you keep adding them, okay? And then you have a bunch of questions that we want you to answer. So these are all the questions we want you guys to answer. We will give you about 40 minutes to go figure all this out and answer all these questions. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask, and then we'll have a little review session afterwards. Any question there? If we do all the table at once, yes, it will do little tabs. It will do little tabs. I just didn't do it all at once, even though it doesn't take that long because the files are big. But yes, you will. If you do all the tables at once, you will get little tabs like you just saw in the box that I just did. So in this particular, whoops, where's my box? There's my box. You'll just see more tabs show up right here. Okay. Any other questions before we get started? Any questions that I didn't answer? What is the function of fake data generation in White Rabbit? I've actually never used that. I don't know for sure. I would have to get back to you on that one. I don't actually use that. I only use it to scan. If the data has null, then it'll show up as a blank. So you'll see just like this death date, you see how it's blank? That's what it'll show up as. And it'll be by frequency. So sometimes you'll see a blank down here because its frequency is not as high as the ones that are above. So we are at my time, local time zone, 6:08. So I'm gonna give you up to 48. Okay, whatever time zone you're in. So 40 minutes from now. Let me know if you finish early, because it may not take you guys the whole 40 minutes, but we're gonna give you 40 minutes. Okay, you want the slides. Okay, let me bring the slides back up. But like sorry, every now and then I forget. I need this. Oh, move out of the way. Thank you. There. But like like John says, the slides are actually inside the this little environment, it's under students here. If you go here, there's day 1 and then day 2. So, but I will leave this up. Okay. And my question here is, does anyone need any help in a different language? We can try to put you guys in breakout rooms